You got P-A-R-K was spelled correctly. And that was good. Wait a minute. And you spelled O-U-T right. But when it came to beach, you spelled it B-E-E-C-H, which is like the, well, there's a gum called beech nut gum. But the correct spelling is, we meant beach like the sand. So it should have been like the ocean. B-B-A-C-H.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's the difference. Well, okay, I forgive you. But remember it next time. Okay, stay there.
That was artist William Wegman with his dog and alter ego Man Ray in a 1973 video called Spelling Lesson. This is NEA Arts Online. I'm Josephine Reed. This issue of NEA Arts focuses on the work of artists who had received NEA grants early in their career. So William Wegman was a natural choice. He received 2 NEA fellowships, one in 1975 for video and another in 1982 for photography. Moving fluently among drawing, painting, photography, and video, William Wegman is hard to characterize. A conceptual postmodernist artist with a funny bone, Wegman is probably best known for the photographs and videos of his Weimaraners in unusual poses and in costumes that look like surreal sight gags. Always an innovator, William Wegman was one of the first artists to use video as an art form. His early video works, many of which star Man Ray, combine minimalist performance with low-tech video to create unlikely moments of absurdist comedy. Wegman and Man Ray caught hold in the popular imagination. In fact, the Village Voice named Man Ray 1982's Man of the Year, which was fine with Wegman since he always thought of the dog as his collaborator. But don't let Wegman's easygoing humor and sense of the absurd fool you. His list of accomplishments are legion. Since the late 1970s, he's received international acclaim for his work in photography. William Wegman exhibits in shows around the world. His work is in the permanent collections of many museums, including the Walker Center in Minneapolis, the Whitney Museum of Art in New York City, the Smithsonian Art Museum in Washington, D.C., and the Australian National Gallery. His photos and videos have also been a great popular success and have appeared on television programs like Sesame Street and Saturday Night Live. He's branched out to create a series of children's books combining fairy tales with dogs. In 2006, the Brooklyn Museum explored 40 years of Wegman's work in all media in the aptly titled retrospective, William Wegman, Funny Strange. In a review of the show, the art critic for the New York Times said of Wegman, quote, "Dogs or no dogs, Mr. Wegman is one of the most important artists to emerge from the heady experiments of the 1970s." Unquote. I spoke with Bill Wegman in his spacious loft in the Chelsea neighborhood of New York. Before we settled in for a talk, he graciously showed me around his various studios, one for painting, for photography, for video. 2 of his 3 dogs, Bobbin and Candy, settled down very nicely. But 1-year-old Flo has a lot of energy, and you'll hear her from time to time, especially close to the end when her patience has clearly worn thin. I was very curious to know how Bill started working with dogs, so I asked him to tell me the genesis of Spelling Lesson.
Well, it was made in East Hampton in a studio that a friend of mine's father had relinquished and given to us. It was a factory building. New York was torturous. I had this miserable little loft on 27th Street that I was subletting, and my dog Man Ray, who had just moved from the beach in Santa Monica, was tortured by 6th Avenue and 27th Street rather than being at the beach. So I kept thinking of ways to not be in New York, but I was, a New York artist, so I had to kind of dart back and forth. This piece was made in East Hampton. The idea came to me on the way to the Everson Museum, where David Ross was curating a video show. And the Everson Museum was on Walnut Street, but before we came to Walnut, you went to Cedar, Beach, and I was sort of saying it out loud, and I said, beach. And Man Ray just went berserk from the back seat of the car when I said beach, but it was beach, like the tree, not the ocean. And so I went back to New York. I dreamt up that piece. He had such a fantastic connection to me. Everything I said, there were certain words that he would practically unscrew his head over. Beach was one. My father, who he adored, George, was another, which I say George, his head would unscrew because George lives and still lives in the country in Massachusetts. So there were these key words. For some reason, it took me a while to figure out what, because I lived in Milwaukee for a while, what Milwaukee was, but there's the word walk in Milwaukee. And so, every once in a while he'd start getting animated, and it was through how he picked up on the language.
And when did you move into photographing him?
I photographed him simultaneously. He was 6 weeks old when I got him in 1970 from Long Beach. I was living in San Pedro, but teaching in Long Beach for 1 year. And I think that both video and photo were disciplines that were very new to me, but ones that I felt were complementary. With video, it was pretty much just jumping in front of the camera and dangling things there, whether it was the dog or my finger or a light bulb or whatever it was. With the photos, though, I made little sketches sometimes and then would assemble them. So that came out of installation art I had been making in Wisconsin, where I felt that actually I was kind of influencing the installations so they'd look better in the photograph. And then it occurred to me that what I really should be doing was making photo pieces, as they became known as, rather than documenting performances or installations. And I also like the power aspect of being able to publish or broadcast, which both video and photography was capable of. Your work could be in a magazine and would be understood the same way, whereas a performance, you had to kind of be there, or installation, you could only see an aspect of it, but not the whole thing. I felt like when you were looking at one of my photos in a magazine, it may not be as crystallized as it would be in your hands or on the wall, but for me it would mean the same. So that was a major thought I had about it.
When you started doing video, artists weren't doing video.
Getting involved in video seemed just electric and surprising and really something that I felt that I really discovered it. I didn't really know other artists that were using it. It was just something that happened. I didn't really necessarily calculate this as a career, but I remember borrowing some equipment and bringing it into my studio when I was a visiting artist at the University of Wisconsin. And I set the stuff up and immediately had a sense of how I could use it. And it was something that just came to me. I had made 7 reels of video, 1 a year, from 70 to 77. So part of the problem why I didn't continue was switching from black and white to color. I couldn't figure out how to deal with color video. Then you needed tremendous amount of light. It made the studio hot and unpleasant back then. Now every camera records color simply and easily, and there's none of that problem. But in the beginning, with that early video, it really made the act of making color videos a torture for me. And it also coincided with me starting to work with a Polaroid 2024 camera in Boston, so that kind of took over as my major medium by 78, 79. I started to use that. And then I didn't do video again until 98, and I made 2 years of video again.
I want to talk about Man Ray as your subject. The portraits you did of him with the Polaroid are just extraordinary.
That was towards the end of his life. He was 9 years old, and at first we would go to Boston. That's where the camera was, in Cambridge, and so I would stop at my parents' house and pick up possibly some of my mother's golfing clothes, or when I was in Boston, I'd stay with my friend Betsy, a fellow artist, and borrow some of her stuff. I didn't really want to make these color pictures, but I found a way to. It really did sort of made me think in terms of the beautiful again rather than just the cool.
Yeah, that's a dilemma, isn't it? Getting
It
trapped
is,
by the
yeah.
cool.
I took an amazingly beautiful photograph, and I didn't trust it. You know, I wanted to deny it, but then I decided, okay, that's fine. I didn't go try to do more beautiful ones. But I had to accept that this one was beautiful. It was a picture that I'm thinking of Man Ray, where I put false eyelashes on him, and he was posing next to an old student of mine when I was teaching in Long Beach, Hester. And they were shown in profile, and somehow the joke was they both have big eyelashes, but you don't see that because it didn't register. So the way I made the work was, it wasn't a successful photograph. It was absolutely stunning. It looks like, in fact, it was on the cover of Art Forum. It was one of their most successful covers, Ingrid Sishi told me. And it was better than me, the picture, and that's what photography gives you sometimes by accident, an amazing moment. And it wasn't one at the time I could have dreamt up. I'm going to do this powerful picture of Beauty and the Beast. It looked very masculine, feminine. It was like a double profile rather than, a joke about the eyelashes.
How did you manage to make so many photographs and videos with dogs without it falling into a gimmick?
Well, I don't know. I was very, very careful not to overuse him. The real danger, I suppose, was when I started to make books, children's books and so forth. And that happened with Faye, my second dog, where I made her tall one day at Polaroid. The camera is vertical, and I was trying to get things up there. So I put Faye on a pedestal, and I was wrapping fabric around her as though she was some kind of a column. And my assistant Andrea was talking to me from behind and helping keep Faye up there, and it looked like her arms became Faye's. And it was startling and funny and eerie and not terribly cute like dogs dressed up tend to be. So I thought it was okay since it was menacing somewhat. It looked more like creatures from mythology rather than some cartoon or circus. So I kind of went with that. But I think then it became like a one-liner about me. Oh, he's the guy that dresses up dogs. The guy that dresses up those dogs. And that's why people, I'm sure, still remember me, even though it was just a small part of the work. Man Ray, I never dressed him up as a person. I dressed him up as an Airedale once, and a frog, and an elephant, or just as a dog, another kind of dog sometimes. But with Faye, she became this creature that became the evil stepmother. She became like a Joan Crawford character. She became these personas, and then I'd turn her back into a caterpillar sometimes. So, and then when I had multiple dogs, then I had all of these characters. I had first Faye and her daughter Batty and her son Chundo, and they became sort of the superstars of my children's books. The press became there. I would go on book tours. There would be newspaper articles. There would be spots on talk shows, and that made this kind of work almost work against the art world. It became, I think, for some, not all, but he's no longer an artist. He's doing these commercial, yeah. So I could understand that in a way.
Don't you think, or I'll just tell you what I think, and you
Sure,
can tell
please.
me if you think it, but don't you think in a way what you were doing was sort of breaking down that dichotomy between high art and what's popular?
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me throughout your career, something you've always been concerned about is having your work be accessible to people.
I really did. I was very stymied right before I had the sort of breakthrough in video and photo. I was putting interesting things on the wall, like mud and hair and rotting carrots. And I remember a fellow artist came into my studio, and there was debris all over the floor, and he said, "It looked really great." And it did, and that was the problem. The stuff on the floor looked really good, but I didn't do it on purpose, and I really felt like I needed to control every aspect of the work, that I needed the intention there. I needed clarity. And one way of knowing whether this clarity was being received was if someone responded, and laughter is one way where you really know someone gets it. And I think that must have really appealed to me, the fact that someone just fell down laughing. But I wasn't really necessarily after humor, but it certainly did pat me on the back, I guess.
Well, it permeates a lot of your work, wouldn't you say?
I think I have a funny bone, and I noticed the video pieces, most of them are funny. The ones that are interesting, I'm less interested in, I suppose. The photo pieces, one tends not to laugh at. The drawings that I started to make in my third year of my serious work, I suppose, by 73, some of those are really funny, I think. And it has to do with, drawings can be funny in a way paintings never can be because of the weight of history that they have. And if they are funny, then that's complicated by their physicality, whereas a drawing is physical, but it also is not. And I think that's purer and funnier and whips into your head and stays there, where a painting gets into your head, but it's much more powerful to stand in front of it and receive it that way. That's why it's always refreshing and rejuvenating to go to museums and stand in front of the Curico that you see all the time. You start to live it in a different way.
Tell me when you returned to painting, to actually painting on canvas again.
Sure. I was a painter. I stopped painting in my first year of grad school. I kind of bought into the fact that painting was dead. So when I started to have dreams that I was painting, I think it was in my mid-40s or even late 40s, I felt like I really had to do it. But I went back to my last painting I did in high school. I painted pictures of the Breck Girl, which got me accepted at Mass Art because I was good at drawing. So I made these paintings as if I never went to art school. Also, I've been drawing too, so they kind of look like my drawings kind of come to life. They were a little scrappy and funky, I suppose. And Holly Solomon, who was my dealer at the time, was so in love with painting to begin with that she just was wonderful to show work to and encouraged, I guess. And so somewhat embarrassed about returning to painting, but knowing that I really loved it, but also didn't know how. I thought I knew how, but I didn't. I had to kind of learn how. So I really had moved far away from my drawings into doing paintings the way painters would paint. My first ones were, I had to think, what's a suitable subject for painting? There's something different about painting than drawing and photos, and you have to think about what it should be. So I think one of my most brilliant decisions was that it should be on canvas and it should look like Cézanne. So I did a painting of tents, which were of canvas on canvas, but they look like Cézanne. So there were all of those kind of funny but historical notions about them. And then since painting takes time, sometimes they're just things that you daydream about while you're making them.
You had a big retrospective in 2006, Funny Strange.
Yeah.
Which is a perfect title.
Yeah, thank you. That was based on one of the drawings that I made for another show in Boston, actually, which I've never told anyone because it seemed like the wrong thing to tell someone. But when David Ross was at the ICA in Boston, I believe it was, he had a show which he titled Funny Strange, and I made a poster for it. So I think that's right. And that show, I think, was interesting because it showed every line of my work in a pretty well flushed out. Photos, videos, paintings, they all seemed to be established. Whereas the show that I had at the Whitney in 87, I think it was, it looked almost like, for this class he did these, and for this class that. But the time period made the selection process, and it seemed have more weight. Every line, I think of myself as having these 4 lines of the drawings, the paintings, the videos, the photos. Those are the things that I do, and each branch, each chapter is major for me. I don't weight one higher than the other.
I think for many people, it was really the first time they got a glimpse of how wide your net is.
Yeah, that's what I saw and liked about it too, that it seemed to mix it together. Floaty, she's working on a project. It seemed to mix it together, and it seemed all okay. There it seemed to hold up.
Tell me what you're working on now.
Well, I'm working on these paintings with postcards, and I've been doing that since 96. something or other. 3 was the first time I stuck a postcard to a piece of paper and started to extend it. But now the latest ones seem to have a lot of design elements, and I'm working in as many different ways as I possibly can. I have about 2 billion postcards, so until I use them all up, I can't stop. We'll see.
Well, thank you so much.
Flo, really?
She's young.
Yeah.
That's painter, video artist, photographer, and dog lover, William Wegman, who's received 2 NEA fellowships, one in 1975 for video and another in 1982 for photography. To find out more about his work, go to wegmanworld.com. For NEA Arts Online, I'm Josephine Reed. Thanks for listening.